Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I brought a war powers resolution to the floor of this Congress to get U.S. troops out of Syria, arguing that the United States, being excessively entangled in great power competition in Syria, wasn't making life better for Syrians, it wasn't playing out to our benefit in the sphere of great power competition, and that it left U.S. service members and contractors as sitting ducks. And following that vote, which I lost overwhelmingly on a bipartisan fashion, sadly, there were casualties. There was the death of an American, because we have now become the neighborhood crime watch of certain areas in Syria where there are oil rigs. And that's what it's all about. So I now come to the floor with this resolution to repeal a 2004 emergency vis-a-vis Syria. 2004. Now, it's supposed to be voted on by Congress every 6 months thereafter, but we have been derelict in our duty in doing so. And so I'm glad that today we're bringing forward a number of these emergency resolutions that have just been dormant slush funds, spending untold sums of money with no transparency as to how much is going into the Syrian emergency. But how about this rule for how about the House thinks about emergencies? Nothing's allowed to be an emergency for 20 years. Because if it were really an emergency, there probably would have been some cataclysmic event of biblical proportion before the 20 years. And if it's still an emergency 20 years later, it's a chronic condition, and the United States cannot be the world's policeman, and we cannot be the world's piggy bank. Now, if the principal argument against my resolution is that my resolution is soft on Assad, well, the logic that undergirds that is that somehow the 2004 resolution was this great anti-Assad tool that we must have, that we must maintain to beat Assad. Well, look around, Mr. Speaker, Assad's never been stronger. So if this 2004 resolution was Assad kryptonite, it's been the worst Assad kryptonite you could ever imagine. It's malfunctioned. So I think we ought to repeal this emergency. We have sought transparency to see how much money has been going pursuant to it. We don't know the answer to that question. And to the extent that there are sanctions that we still want to maintain, whether there are the other national emergencies that exist targeted at terrorism generally, at Russia, at Iran, the Magnitsky Act, there are all kinds of other authorities for the President, the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of the Department of Commerce, even the DOD weighs in, state, regarding sanctions regimes. So this is not a vote to lift sanctions and then just hope for the best with some pretty gnarly Syrians. In fact, it's us standing up to do our job, and that's what we should do in repealing this 2004 resolution. I reserve.
The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.